Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Jinger Duggar and Jeremy Vuolo have new perspective on first year of marriage. It was the hardest. Jinger Duggar and her husband, Jeremy Vuolo, are reflecting candidly on the early days of their union. During the Wednesday, September 18 episode of their Jinger and Jeremy podcast, the couple who tied the knot in 2016 were both surprised by their revelations about their first year of marriage. I'm looking back 8 years in and going, that year was a breeze. But then you said, last night, no, I think it was the hardest. And I think I agree with you, Vuolo 37 said. We faced so much adjustment and so much change. Duggar 30 noted that the struggles had nothing to do with her and Vuolo. We got along super well, she said. I would say there were challenges just from me adjusting. It was more like adjustment challenges. The 19 kids and counting alum shared that living with Vuolo for the first time and starting their lives together was the easiest part of the life change. It was leaving behind her big family in Arkansas for Laredo, Texas, that left her reeling. I realized in that time that I was afraid to go to coffee with a friend. I was petrified in fear of having to do things by myself because I had a security blanket of having people around me all the time, whether that was siblings or even a close friend, said Jinger, who is one of Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar's 19 kids. I was so used to that setting. The reality TV personality explained that something shifted for her after leaving her comfort zone for the first time. It was really hard. I had to figure out who I was as a person, she said. I had the identity crisis of, I know who I was in my family, but who am I as an individual now? Jinger was also beginning to re-examine some of the fundamentalist Christian teachings she'd been raised with. I was realizing that some of these things that I thought I really held dear, like the teachings of Institute in Basic Life Principles founder, Bill Gothard, I'm realizing I'm not believing that anymore, she recalled. And that was a huge shift. Jinger wrote a book about her conservative Christian upbringing, Becoming Free Indeed, Disentangling Faith from Fear, which was released in January 2023. In the memoir, she recalled being taught she needed to perform for her future spouse in order to keep him faithful, which resulted in her not expressing opinions during her first year of marriage. Jeremy gently encouraged me to speak my mind and let him know if I didn't agree with something, and to not apologize for that. He didn't want me to perform or be fake. He wanted me to be myself. More than once he said, Jing, you're not a Stepford wife, she wrote. The first time he said that, I asked, what's a Stepford wife? When he explained the concept, I realized. He wanted me to think for myself and figure out what my convictions were and what I liked and disliked. Despite realizing in hindsight how challenging their first year of marriage was, Jinger said on Wednesday that the growth that took place over that time was huge. Jinger and Vuolo share daughters Felicity, 6, and Evangeline Jo, 3. Jinger said during an episode of the pair's podcast last month that she's game to expand their family, especially with twins. If we had another kid, had twins, I'd be down for it, she said. I feel like it would be a lot of work initially, but then you also it's a faster way to have babies. Jinger Duggar and Jeremy Vuolo's first year of marriage is a story of love, challenges, and growth, a journey that shaped the foundation of their relationship in unexpected ways. At first glance, it might have seemed like a fairy tale. The couple met through mutual connections, shared a whirlwind courtship, and soon exchanged vows in a beautiful ceremony that millions of fans followed closely. Jinger, one of the daughters from the famous Duggar family of 19 kids and counting, and Jeremy, a former professional soccer player turned pastor, seemed like the perfect match. But as they revealed years later, their first year of marriage was far from the idyllic start that others might have imagined. Instead, it was the hardest year they ever faced together, filled with lessons that they couldn't have learned any other way. Hashtag love at first sight, but not smooth sailing. When Jinger and Jeremy first got together, their love felt magnetic. Jinger, raised in a large, conservative Christian family, had always followed the strict courtship rules her parents laid out. Her relationship with Jeremy, however, marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would begin to explore her independence, finding her own beliefs and voice within her marriage. Jeremy, on the other hand, came from a different world. Though he too shared a strong Christian faith, his experiences as a former athlete and his life outside the Duggar family spotlight gave him a more nuanced view of the world. Their connection was immediate, but merging their lives meant more than just blending their love. It meant learning to navigate their differences. Like many newlyweds, Jinger and Jeremy faced the transition of living together. They moved to Laredo, Texas, where Jeremy was pastoring, and Jinger had to adjust to a new city far from her family and support system. The excitement of being together, building a home, and starting their own routines was thrilling at first, but soon reality set in. The challenges of navigating household responsibilities, finances, and the differing expectations they each brought to the marriage tested them in ways they hadn't anticipated. Jinger, having grown up in a tightly knit family with strong traditions and values, had always seen marriage as something to cherish, a sacred union ordained by God. But no one had prepared her for the trials that came with merging two distinct lives. Jeremy, meanwhile, approached marriage with a desire for partnership, but he too found himself surprised by the emotional weight of their disagreements. As he later admitted, both he and Jinger had to learn how to communicate effectively, something that proved harder than either of them had expected. Hashtag the pressure of public life. Compounding their challenges was the constant spotlight that followed them. Being part of the Duggar family meant that Jinger had always lived in the public eye, and her marriage to Jeremy was no exception. Their fans expected updates on their life, their faith journey, and even their family planning. Every decision they made seemed to be scrutinized, and the pressure to maintain a perfect image weighed heavily on both of them. Jeremy, who was new to the level of fame Jinger had grown accustomed to, found the expectations overwhelming. He wanted to lead his family spiritually and emotionally, but the public's watchful eye created a sense of performance pressure that neither of them had anticipated. For Jinger, who had spent her life navigating media attention, this was familiar but still difficult. In many ways, she felt like her identity was wrapped up in the public persona of the Duggar daughter, and her marriage was a chance to step out of that shadow and into her own life. But that transition wasn't as easy as she had hoped. The couple often felt torn between their desire to be transparent about the struggles they were facing and the need to protect their privacy. They were newlyweds, after all, learning, growing, and making mistakes like any other couple. But in the eyes of their fans, every move was a reflection of their values, their faith, and their commitment to each other. Hashtag growing pains and personal struggles. One of the most profound challenges they faced during that first year was the shift in their personal identities. Jinger had always been the obedient daughter, known for her deep faith and adherence to her family's strict code. But as she and Jeremy navigated their marriage, she began to question some of the things she had been taught. She started to explore new ways of expressing her faith, adopting a more personal and individual approach, rather than strictly following the doctrines of her upbringing. This shift wasn't easy for her or for Jeremy. While Jeremy supported Jinger's journey of self-discovery, it sometimes led to tensions between them. He had always admired Jinger's faith and her devotion to her family's values, but he also encouraged her to find her own way.